Exactly 1 year ago, I received plant mail and I unboxed the tiniest little tissue culture plants. Over the last 12 months, I tried to grow these plants to the best of my ability, and in today's video, we're going to recap the journey over the last 12 months, and I'm going to tell you anything that I learned about these plants. Hey everybody, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. We're back with another 12-month transformation video, and today we're looking at 3 different plants. We're looking at my Anthurium luxurians, my Alocasia frydek, and my Alocasia odora batik. I posted a 6 months transformation video. Oh, hello Bradley. I posted a 6 months transformation video 6 months ago, but in case you haven't seen it, I'm going to give you a quick update on what happened in the first 6 months of this journey. But before we have a look at what happened back then, Jan from the past, present and future would really appreciate if you'd hit the subscribe button. Subscribing to my channel is for free, but it really makes a difference for me. And if you're already subscribed, thank you so much. I really appreciate the support. So this is from a plant grower in Western Australia called Flora Magnifica, and I've ordered from them a lot recently. Well, by a lot I mean I've ordered 3 plants before. I've had my El Choco, my Florida Beauty and my Florida Ghost, all from them. It's also going into spring over here, so it's just a perfect time to get onto some plants. And when they're still really small, I can still fit them in my IKEA cabinet, which is awesome. Alright, first one, Alocasia frydek. Oh, I hope you can see this. I'm covering my face so my camera doesn't focus on me. Alright, and let's have a close-up look at the roots. That is looking really good. So I'm gonna just pop it right back in here. It was also sufficiently moist, so I'm just gonna do nothing. Let's go with the next one. Let's stay on theme. Let's go with the other Alocasia maybe. Alright, so I don't know, I had this day where I just had the desire to buy all the variegated Alocasias in the world. Bradley? Are you stealing my chair? I just got off for 1 second. Right, I'll just unplug these. Also some roots over here. I don't want to cause too much stress, but just wanted to see that there are roots. So, oh, and a new leaf unfurling. Right, I'll park this here too. Ah, they're so cute! Okay, and now the Anthuriums. So I have 2 of the same. There was one Anthurium always on my wish list that I was never able to get my hands on because the prices were just outrageous, like thousands. I'm not talking about like $300-400. Like I'm talking about plants selling for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on how unique the hybrid was or how pure the seeds are or whatever it might be. Anthurium luxurians, that was just the priciest, right? Like eventually all the crystallinums, clarinerviums, magnificums, they went down, but the luxurians for some reason were always really, really expensive. So I found these cute little tissue cultured ones and they're still $100 each, right? So it's still not a steal. It's still quite expensive if you think about the size. I deserve to reward myself. And I don't even need a reason to reward myself. If I feel like it, I should just do it. And I just really felt like it. So I got 2. You're gonna focus. Here you go. I think that's in focus now. Well, they're tiny. You can't really see much yet. Let's just check their roots as well. And they seem still very moist. Yep, there's some roots visible there. Shit, why do I vacuum before I make a mess? Like, I need to vacuum again. Alright, second one. Yeah, I don't want to pull it out too much, but there's some roots there. I can see roots. So, I unpacked them. I looked at them all as well, and I can't see any pests. Now, I highly recommend that you isolate your plants, if possible, after you got them. So, in case there is something wrong with them, and it doesn't even need to be pests, it can be fungal or bacterial infections as well. So if you can isolate them so that whatever they might have isn't going to spread to your entire collection. I'm not going to do that, so I do as I say, not as I do. Reason for that is I just don't have space anywhere where I can isolate them but provide them with good conditions. So what I'm going to do with these, I'm going to pop them in my IKEA cabinet that's just right behind me over here, because right now the most important thing is for these plants to recover from any sort of shock. So they were shipped from Western Australia. I got the tracking notification on Monday, so I'm assuming somebody would have packed these plants on Sunday and then brought them to the post office on Monday. It's Wednesday afternoon now, so the plant has been in darkness and been shipped around, and I don't know what sort of temperatures it would have been exposed to over the last 3 to 4 days. And these plants are small, right? Like they're not going to be able to deal with all too much. So right now my mission is really to reduce the shock that shipping would have induced. So I want to provide them with the best possible conditions. Alrighty, so let's hear from Jan in the future, who hopefully is going to show you some nice progress. Alrighty, and here we are 1 month later, and I forgot to turn off slow motion. So this whole thing is going to be in slow motion without sound, so voice over Jan is taking over. But let me speed up that footage for us a little bit so we don't have to watch me do this all so slowly. Alrighty, here we are. This is the Odora Batik. It's growing quite nicely and has really good roots. So those roots look like they would appreciate a bigger pot. Pretty much the same with the Friedeck over here as well. I think 1 new leaf, but definitely some growth in the root department. Very happy with those. And the exact same with the Luxurians. They actually shot the lights out when it comes to the root department. Look how nice those roots look. Not much leaf growth so far, but just purely based on these chunky roots over here, I figured let's give them a repot. So I very carefully try and remove as much moss as possible from these roots and give them an aeroid mix instead. Now this aeroid mix over here isn't as chunky as my aeroid mix I would use for a moss pile, because these plants are still quite small, and while they have good roots, these roots are still quite fine, just purely given the size of the plant. So it's an aeroid mix that's a little more tree fern fiber heavy. Tree fern fiber has great water retention, so that should suit those plants, and those are 10 centimeter pots. I put a little layer of moss on top of the anthuriums, and then I pop them back into my IKEA cabinet, and I'll see you in the next update. And here we are. So it's been 1.5 months since the repot, and these plants have been thriving. So let's have a look at all of these. I'll bring them a little bit closer, but overall very happy with their growth so far. First up, we've got this, and I have to apologize. I think in the initial video I actually switched the two alocasias around. So this is the Okinawa, what is it called? Batik? Okinawa Batik? Something like, I'll pop it on screen again. But it has had honestly the nicest variegated leaves. Most recently this more half-half one. You can really see that the green half is so much like healthier and more developed than the variegated half, but oh well, so be it. And a new one on the way over here. So happy days, and look at the root system that it has already grown in just 1.5 months since the repot. So this is in a mix that is very tree fern fiber heavy, because I find that alocasias really don't like drying out. This one is the Friedeck. This is its latest leaf that it pushed out, and it's working on its next one already. Love this, would love a little bit more variegation, but specifically when they're really small, it's actually quite nice for them to have more green, because it helps them get established. Huh? This one doesn't have quite that much variegation. This one had even less. So it's a good ride. It seems to be increasing in variegation, and I don't know if you can see that sheen, but I love that velvet texture. Very happy. Also, prolific root growth. Is this going to focus? Yeah, prolific root growth. And you can also see all of that condensation. It's a good indicator for me that I just don't need to water this, but look at all of these beautiful roots. That's happy. Also, again, very tree fern fiber heavy, because I really don't want this to dry out. And then I have the two Luxurians. They look so nice. Look at how like the texture of luxuriance is already coming out, even though they're still quite small. This one is already growing its next leaf over here, so very, very excited for that. Overall, really happy with these. Love them. Can't see quite as much root growth. There's some coming through, but compared to the alocasias, there's quite little root growth in here. Actually, I can't really see much, but that's okay. So far, I'm super happy with that. I did not expect them to actually grow this fast, so I'm excited to give you an update in another couple of months or weeks' time. Hello, and I'm back with a little update. It's been 2 months since we last spoken, and a few things have happened. Some good, some bad. Let's start off with some of the bad news. I only have one of the luxurians left, but that is not because the other one died. That is because I gave it away. And I actually gave the larger one away, and I kept the smaller one. But it is growing a new leaf right here. And I'm really excited to see what this turns into. The texture is exactly what I was hoping for. Nice and, I think it's called bullite. Technically not actually bad news. I was expecting that. However, what is bad news is this. My fry deck is not happy. I can't see any signs of spider mites or any other pests. I can't see signs of root rot. Actually, I can see some really healthy roots in this pot. But the newest growth came out of this petiole moldy, so I had to like rip it out because obviously I don't want the mold to spread. But I don't know why and how and where. But there's a big corm that has grown over here, so maybe it's just gonna reshoot somewhere else. But yeah, it's looking very sad, and I honestly don't know exactly what happened. It kind of happened around about the same time as the move, so maybe I missed something, I don't know. I don't think it's because of the shock, because of the actual move, because it was in the IKEA cabinet before, and it's in the IKEA cabinet now, so there's not too much change in conditions. Plus, the other alocasia, and of course this alocasia might just be much easier going, is thriving. Of course giving me some yellow leaves, but as long as that's always the oldest leaf, I'm not mad. Let me bring this a bit closer, because this has grown crazy roots. Look at that, crazy root system. And some really nice foliage as well. It had this fully white leaf over here, not fully white, like very white, with some green speckles and some half. I think this one is the latest one. So stunning variegation and decent growth. These two are right next to each other in the IKEA cabinet. They're getting the same conditions, they're getting the same treatment. All I can think of is maybe that I overwatered this a little bit. Given that this has smaller leaves, it would use less water. I kind of stick to the same frequency, but then alocasias usually don't mind being more on the wettish side as long as there's aeration, which there is, because I can see by the roots that they're really healthy. So anyway, so far no real lesson learned here as to why the fry deck might have gone downhill. I might just put it in my actual greenhouse and see if it's happier there, because I mean, something needs to change. This is just not doing anything, and I'll just see you when it's time for the next update. I've had these plants for 6 months, and I've had them for the better half of the year, if that makes sense. So the 6 months going into spring and summer, so just keep that in mind. And I really can't complain apart from this one. So let's maybe start off with this one. This is my fry deck. And she just never really came back from the move. Like, she really bloody hated it, and yeah, that's it. Now, I think I might have kept her a little bit too moist. That could have been my fault, sauce. But yeah, I eventually removed the plant. I actually, like, one comb was pushing out to the top, so I actually removed that comb, and hasn't done anything yet. But the pot in itself is showing 3 new signs of growth. One here, one right here, and one here. Very hard to see. I will just pop it back into the greenhouse where most of my other alocasias are these days. And I just hope that I'll have 3 new plants coming out of here. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. I don't know, but it just comes to show that not everything works out. This plant, however, has received the same conditions as well as the same care, and it is doing amazing, right? I love this plant. I think the variegation is stunning. It doesn't skip a beat growing, and look at the root system that it has grown as well. So this plant is super, super happy. Now they're the same genus, but not the same species, right? So maybe just one species is a little finicker than the other, and it just didn't really suit the conditions that I was able to offer it. I know that a lot of people are growing fried eggs and growing them really nicely, but I can't even grow the green version. It's just, I don't know. There's just something with my conditions and my approach to care that the green velvet and the fried egg just don't appreciate, and that's okay. Maybe it's just time to give up and focus on the plants that actually like it here. So I'm gonna focus on this plant. I want to give it a repot because I think that's what it needs to really take it to the next level. This plant can grow quite large. And then lastly, I've got my luxuriance over here. I think it's come a long way as well. This is a new leaf that's still inflating, so I hope it's going to get quite large. It has some roots pushing up against the edge over here. So it's doing its thing, but I'm not in a rush to repot this or do anything about it. It's just doing its own thing, and I'm happy for it to do so. I was really worried at the very beginning when they're really tiny, they're so vulnerable, but it overcame that stage. So I think from here, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and I'll stay patient. So I'll park these 2 on the side. Voiceover Jan is back because Jan in the video is just yapping non-stop. Let's keep it really short. I just basically unpotted this plant, carefully removed as much of the aeroid mix as I could to loosen up the roots, gave it a larger 14 centimeter pot and put it back into my aeroid mix. And that's about it. Bye. Righty, and thank you so much, Jan, from the past. And here we are at the 12-month mark. I haven't filmed any updates over the last 6 months because it wasn't the most rewarding 6 months ever, to be really fair. Keep in mind that I live in Australia, so I got these plants at the beginning of spring last year. So obviously I then got to enjoy the best time of the year for the first 6 months. But now the last 6 months were kind of the worst time of the year to grow. Specifically, the last 3 months weren't really the best, and neither of these plants has really done much in those last 3 months. So there wasn't all too many updates to share, so I figured let's just wrap it up with one more update at the 12-month mark. But there are definitely some updates and some learnings that I made over the last 6 months. So let's maybe start off with the biggest learning of them all. Let's talk about the fried egg. And I'll bring you a bit closer. Alrighty, this is my Alocasia fried egg, and yes, it's not the most impressive specimen, but it exists and it has a very healthy, nice root system in here as well. At the 6-month mark, this plant was almost completely dead, but I saw a few new reshoots from corms in the pot, and those are exactly these 3 plants that you see now. There must have been 3 corms in there, and those 3 corms reshot. So happy days. Now on the back of the video, I've had a lot of feedback from you guys that, first of all, that a lot of you feel very similar about Alocasia fried egg, and that it seems to be a tricky plant for some of us. But I've also had a lot of feedback that for you, Alocasia fried egg is one of the easiest plants. And I was basically told to just try and neglect this plant a little bit more, which is hard for me. I definitely am a more helps more person. I'm very hands-on with my approach to plant care, and I'm definitely not somebody who just like sets and forgets. I always think that the more effort I'm putting into my plants, the more likely I'll be rewarded with beautiful growth. But with the fried egg, it seems to be that neglecting is actually doing the thing. Or not necessarily neglecting, but just doing less. So I moved it out of my IKEA cabinet and into just my office space. Now my office space still has very decent humidity. In summer a little lower, in winter a little bit higher, but it usually averages between 60 to 70. And I had it in a south-facing window, just natural light. Keep in mind, south-facing window would be the equivalent of a north-facing window in the northern hemisphere. So for us, it's the worst exposure, or like the least light, but that seems to be a good thing for this particular plant. So I had it in that window and it was growing really nicely, but then over the last 3 months it hasn't done anything. So I'm going to keep it there, and I'm going to assume that as we're getting closer to summer, there's going to be more light, there's going to be warmer temperatures. So I'm hoping that this plant is just going to wake up. But look, it's an alocasia. It could have fully gone dormant over winter. Given that I have not had a good track record with this plant, I'm actually pretty happy that it even survived winter. And I learned something. Would I get this plant again? Probably not. Looking after this plant for a year, and this is what I've got to show for. It's not necessarily, my proudest moment, but I've definitely learned something. I always say that conditions set the growth potential and your care realizes that potential. But the conditions setting the potential is subject to each individual plant. It's not that one set of conditions set the potential for every single plant. This plant did not enjoy my IKEA cabinet, while the other alocasia I'm about to show you actually very much enjoyed the IKEA cabinet. So 2 alocasias in the same conditions. For one of the plants, it's at great potential for me to then realize. For this plant, it wasn't actually optimizing the plant's potential. So keep that in mind. These conditions that I'm referring to that set the most possible potential for the plant to grow up are subject to the plant and usually mirror the conditions that the plant would appreciate in nature. Yeah, look, now that I've got it, I'm gonna try, but I probably wouldn't have bought it again. But still a good lesson, I believe. Let's keep going with the alocasias. This is my Alocasia odora batic, and it has seen much better days. So what happened with this plant over the last 6 months? It was in my greenhouse, and it was actually growing quite nicely. You can probably see that it's a little bit larger than it was in the last update, but these leaves were growing pretty shortly after that last 6 months update. It then slowly started getting colder and colder out there, and I also had a big infestation of, I believe, aphids out there. So let me show you what I used. I found this spray at Flower Power and said it's for aphids. A couple of applications of that seem to have done the trick, and I haven't seen any since. On top of that, it was then also getting too cold, so I moved it out of the greenhouse and I had it upstairs in my little rescue section. And just last month, it was allowed to come back down because I was pretty confident that there's no further pests on there and it's not looking the worst anymore. It is now living right under this grow light over here that you can see. And that's when it started giving me this leaf, and I can now see a new leaf coming through over here again. So yeah, these leaves are still kind of pretty, but you can definitely see that they're getting a bit older. They're getting some brown spots everywhere. Yeah. Overall, it's not looking its best at the moment. I'm basically just gonna wait for this plant to grow 2 or 3 more leaves, and then I'll start chopping some of the older leaves off. But based on the root system over here, I do believe that this plant is happy and healthy. And now with the approach of spring, summer and warmer temperatures, more light, this plant is probably going to thrive again pretty quickly. I think once the temperatures outside are more consistent and we get less fluctuation and less dips at nighttime, I will also definitely put this back into my greenhouse. So yeah. I would definitely get this plant again, and I think it was definitely growing really well for the first 6 months, and if it wouldn't have been for me being a bit slow in taking it inside and or the aphids, I think this plant could have actually continuously thrived over the second half of the year as well. I think I was just a little bit slow in getting on top of the pests and in moving it inside. So that's definitely on me, but it seems to be a very hardy plant. If you consider the amount of variegation, I would have expected this plant to suffer much more. And when the variegation comes through, it's one of the most beautiful patterns I personally have seen. So definitely something I recommend, but the reason I bought this is because I know it can grow really, really nice and large. So I'm definitely keen to keep you updated over the next year to see if I can actually grow this into a nice, large statement piece. And last, but certainly not least, my Anthurium luxurians. Now, I'm very happy with the performance of this plant. It's not ginormous, but if you consider how tiny it was just 1 year ago, I think this plant has done really, really well. Absolutely love the texture of this plant. Also really like the red veining at the back and the, I think it's hexagonal, hexagonal, and these squarish petioles, these ruffled petioles. Very cool. Really, really enjoy that. You can also see some nice roots coming out here, just waiting for them to make contact with the moss, and lots of roots within the pot over here. Probably a candidate for a repot, but as part of the repot, it will then struggle to fit into the IKEA cabinet, or well, it won't struggle, but there's too much other stuff in the IKEA cabinet still. So I'm gonna wait another month or so once some plants move out of the cabinet into my room. It's gonna be good conditions everywhere very soon. And then I can repot this as well. For now, I'm not super worried about it being root bound. I provide nutrients with my watering anyway, so I don't think it's going to be nutrient deficient straight away. But this one I really enjoy. I specifically enjoy the way that these leaves unfurl when they first come out. They are super dark purple, and then as they inflate, they become more red and then harden off to a green and almost like a green silver, but also really dark. It's definitely gotten darker as it grows a bit older. So over the moon with about this plant. Very happy. 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10, would 100% buy again. And this has been in my IKEA cabinet the whole time. It is actually getting a lot of light in the IKEA cabinet. It's in one of the top spots. Pretty close to a Soltec growth light, so I think definitely this one can handle a little bit of light and it doesn't bother it at all, but I don't think it's necessarily a super fast grower, but that's also okay. But see, maybe over the course of the second year it's gonna grow a little bit faster, but I'm very happy with this plant. Very happy actually, yes. So definitely would buy this one again. But overall, what I really enjoy about this is that I get really small plants that don't take up a lot of space initially. So it's kind of like, you know, when you first buy that plant, you don't need to now rearrange your whole house to account for the plant purchases you just made. And then as the plant grows up, you know, you slowly and surely start integrating it more and more into your collection. So I really enjoy this process. It's even more rewarding when you get nice leaves. I mean, you can probably buy luxuriance in this size these days without breaking the bank, but it's so much more rewarding when you grew it from this tiny plant into something, and it gives you the opportunity to learn a little bit more about the plant. Now, all of these plants are in my normal aeroid mix, which is always linked in the description. All of these plants are provided nutrients via my GT Foliage Focus, which is always linked in the description as well. Yeah, I think that's all I've got to say for today's video. I hope this is encouraging you to also maybe try buying some really small plants. They're much more inexpensive, so you know, you have a little bit less risk if something goes wrong, and I hope you're embracing the journey of growing them rather than just aiming for an end result, because well, at the end of the day it's all about the journey, because the end result might not always be what you're after. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe and leave a nice comment, and I'll see you next time. Bye.